Hi, folks. So it's Neil from Config Services. I'm going to do this webinar on locations maps in LibreNMS. Hopefully, everybody will get something out of it which will benefit them. I'm going to, as you can see on the screen, just run through sort of locations, how you manage those and get them configured. And I'll do a bit of a whistle-stop tour on more general maps within LibreNMS. And then what I want to spend my time focusing on really is custom maps and how you use those. That's in essence sort of replacing the network weather maps that you've seen or used to see in a lot of tools like LibreNMS in the early days, but also some of the older platforms as well. So I'll run through this. I've got a demo set up. It is limited in the information it's got available. I'll try and show as much as I can do. There is a Q&A section. If you want to ask any questions along the way, then feel free to do so. Just to let you know, though, I am on my own doing this, so I'll try and keep an eye on the questions that might pop up and answer them as they appear. But if not, and I miss anything, then I'll sort of post some feedback on LinkedIn at a later stage. Right, so I'll just get started. And the location information. So if you've used LibreNMS in sort of any level of detail, you'll have seen the locations that come back from devices that you configure in there. Most devices let you configure a location value, and that comes back as the syslocation field when we do an SNMP query. And what LibreNMS does is it takes that information, puts it into the database, and it becomes visible within the actual interface for you to use various different sort of areas of the actual portal. Now, you can configure a lot of the location information that comes back, sort of change and edit it on the fly, if you like, based on sort of configuration that you set. So, for instance, if you've got a bunch of devices which have all got an incorrectly configured location value, you can actually manipulate that on the fly. So I'm going to show you some of those bits and pieces as we go through it. Just to kind of get us started, I'm going to head over to the sort of the locations section. So this is where you see the resulting information that gets fed back from your devices will appear in this location section under devices and then geolocations. And what LibreNMS does is it just pulls the text field inserts it into the database, and that's available then. And it'll highlight any devices that you've got associated with that location. So we can see here we've got 3 in total. 2 of those devices are marked as down at the moment. That is coming straight from the device. So if I just quickly show you what it looks like here, this is just a we've got set up at the moment. Here, the syslocation value is just pure and simply the server room in the USA. There's no lat long field available there. So if I go back, we should see this now here. So that's all that's doing at the moment. But obviously that may not be useful to you as an organization. You might want to sort of set some coordinates and pinpoint those locations on a map. Now you can do that in a few different ways. One is to use an address lookup field. So what we can do is we can sort of take the information you send via syslocation. We can do a lookup against Google Maps, or there's a couple of other mapping engines that we can utilize in there as well. But we can do a lookup of that, and we can return the lat long information based on an actual lookup from sort of Google or one of the other providers. If you don't want to use a third-party system, whether that's because you've got proxy restrictions, no external internet access on the device, then you can actually manage that internally within LibreNMS. So as an example here, obviously this is a fake address. We've got coordinates set here, and I've just manually done that. And you can actually just come in here, edit those details, and I've got something saved previously. But if I just sort of copy and paste this out, I can configure the lat long information for that specific address location that we've got. That'll be used now in some of the maps at a later stage, and I'll show you that in a short while. The other way to do this is on the device itself. So if I head back to my SNMP configuration that I've got set up here, again, you can kind of see at the end here, we've got in square brackets the lat long information. If I just go in to edit this field here, I can actually just interface change that information there. Now, LibreNMS will automatically parse that. Anything between square brackets will be passed as a lat long field. So if you put anything other than sort of that correct information in, then it's just not going to do anything at the time. One other thing to point out as well with this, if you're doing the geolocation lookups, like on Google as an example, if the address information here isn't as you would expect to find on Google, then it's going to fail to look up that sort of geolocation for you. So what you do if you want to actually sort of pass on little bits of helpful information as part of the address, but not have it sent to the geolocator to be picked up. So to be able to do that, you basically just want to put your additional information in sort of so or normal brackets. So if I wanted to say this is in a data center in the US, but you want to put some more specific information in there, you can go 4.3, 5, and that isn't then interpreted by any address lookup that might happen. So you'll get your standard address back, and then we'll also pass that information in the brackets back into LibreNMS, so you've got that available for sort of searching and other uses. Now, obviously, this is just a Linux box, but it's the same functionality across the board. So, in fact, actually, if I just go in now to the UK, ignoring the long fields, PD. I just do a discovery now for device. Background. When you're in this interface here, by the way, you can click on the address location information here, and that'll take you to a list of devices. So we saw before that we had 3 devices set against this. That's obviously going to change now because I've just changed that. But these are the 3 devices which have got the same address information in there at this point in time. Okay, I just refresh this now. I'm hoping everything's gone okay. Oh, it's not finished the polling. I'm on a bit of a slow demo, unfortunately, just running on my laptop, but I'll come back to that in a short while. You can edit this information here. So you can, rather than doing lat long information, you can use the map picker as an example. So the lat long I gave before was Buckingham Palace in the UK, but I can just quite easily move this to any part of the world on the M1 down there. And if I save that, then it's going to update the coordinates in the database for you. So you can use the map picker as well. Now the polling's finished in the background, so that's all completed. And we can see here now this is updated. So at the minute we've got 1 device showing in this new address. That's mainly because the other 2 devices, which are actually just aliases of this the test VM that I've got running, so they'll update as well at some point in time. But this is now reporting back that 1 device has got this new address, and we've still got 2 devices pointing to the old address there. We should see that this has picked up the relevant lat long information as well from the brackets that we've sent across. So you can see that here. And that's kind of it in the interface for LibreNMS. When you've got no more devices associated to a location, you can just delete that out of the database. If they reappear at a later stage, it's just going to repopulate that information back in the database. Obviously, any custom coordinates you might have set will be lost at that point. So if you're expecting devices to come back and be matched against a location, it's probably not worth deleting at the time. But it's quite simply, you just hit delete on there, and that'll remove it from the database just to clean things up. One other area of interest, if you've got a bunch of devices that you just want to see what the overall traffic usage is in that particular site, whether it's a data center or your office, then you can just hit the traffic button there and it pulls back some of the graphs that you'll typically see within LibreNMS. That's the majority of where you sort of manage and look after location information within Libre. If we go to one of the devices, so whilst I've been editing this in NetSNMP's config file, you can actually go into the individual devices and overwrite that information as well. So if I go into this one, which is just a test device, which is down at the minute, and on the first page here, we've got this override syslocation. So rather than it be pulled back by SNMP or some other method, we can just overwrite that. And that's another area where you can edit the location information. Supports lat long as well. So if you do your square brackets and your brackets for additional information, then that'll all get pulled in there. In theory, if this is going to work now, there we go. So that's already updated in the database as a new location. I go to that, we can do what we did before, set the coordinates for those particular devices. Now, you might get some devices where you either can't edit the syslocation field and send it back, whether that's because of a buggy SNMP implementation or you don't manage that particular device and you can't get it updated within the organization you work for, then there are ways around that. Now, rather than going through sort of 100 devices and overriding the syslocation in each one, if they've all got the same syslocation field being set by the device, then what you can actually do is just overwrite that. And I'll just sort of paste some configuration into the shell here for you to see. Hopefully the screen is good enough from what we're seeing at the moment. And what we're doing with this now is we're basically setting a location map where we're going to look for this value. So under the sink, and like I said, if you've got 100 devices all responding back with a syslocation of under the sink, it's not very useful, doesn't tell you where they are in the world. You can just automatically get it to update the address or the location information that we see in LibreNMS. So this will replace any syslocation where we explicitly see just this under the sink with under the sink, the office, London, UK. And again, supports lat long in there as well. You can put whatever information you want within that field being returned. There are a couple of other quick configuration options we've got. So we can do regex matches as well. So this one here is just looking for the word sync, and then we'll replace the syslocation field with that in its entirety. One of the other ones is an actual replace, so search and replace in essence. And here we're looking for the word sync again, but rather than replace the whole of the syslocation with this new field, we're just going to replace the word sync. So you might have syslocation coming back where it's sync under the cupboard, and then under the in this it'll be under the sink, the office London, under the cupboard in essence. So there are ways to manipulate the information coming back and just make sort of managing and maintaining locations a little bit easier on yourselves, depending on what access you've got to individual devices. Okay. So I'm going to run on through some of the other maps that are available in LibreNMS now. When we say maps, by the way, we don't always mean geographical maps. They could be things like network maps, etc. So you'll see various different types of maps within LibreNMS. They're usually always available under here. They'll only appear under certain sort of conditions. One of those I'll show you in a second, which is not appearing at the moment, and because we've got a lab environment going on, I've just got to fudge that to be able to make it appear. But one of the first ones that's usually always available for people is this availability map. This is one that it's not a geographical map. It's in essence a very quick sort of up-down status across all of your devices within the platform. You can see the usual color scheme that happens through LibreNMS, which is green for devices that are up, red for anything that's down, and then we've got this orange one, which is for warning, and that's basically a configurable option for devices that have rebooted in a recent period of time. And that defaults to 24 hours. So as you expand out your devices in the system, this obviously gets bigger and bigger, and it'll just be a scrollable list at some point, depending on the size of your estate overall. So that's quite basic. You've got your usual things that you might see a lot of the time where you can click through to get to these individual devices. You can also include things like services. I don't have anything really configured in this at the minute, but you'll show the status of service checks that come back. If you've not used service checks within LibreNMS, it's basically backwards compatibility for Nagios plugins. But that's where you can show these either devices, services, or both together. Now, one of the other ones that'll pop up if you're using device dependency. So in here, if I go to the device menu, I've got some that I've previously set up in this lab. Well, this is all of the hosts that I've got set up and running at the moment. And we can kind of see here that we've got 3 devices, all saying that local host is the parent device. Now, if I go back to maps within LibreNMS, this is going to give you kind of a sort of a hand-drawn network setup. So this is you configuring what your dependency trees look like. It's not using any link information or anything we learn about the devices. This is just what you're configuring and setting out here. Now, the back-end system that we're using with this is Viz.js. So it's a JavaScript library. It's got some of the common things, again, you'll see across some of the maps, which is if you hover over an individual device, it brings you back some of the basic graph information that you'd expect to see. You can click through, take you to the individual devices as you would normally expect to see. One of the things that you can actually do here, though, is highlight. Obviously, this gets busier the bigger your estate is. This is quite a simple one for me at the moment. But one of the things you can do is just go, right, you need, where is the node that you're looking for at the minute? And you can highlight those nodes. So we can see that's changed to just be red outlined at that particular point. You've got these other options here where we can do things like, okay, well, show me all the child devices for that particular device that I'm highlighting. And we can kind of see that all lit up in red in contrast to what it was before. So this just allows you to get a quick visual representation across a network map on your device dependencies that you've configured within LibreNMS. So if you see here now, we're highlighting ones that are missing the parent devices, or you might have things misconfigured, and you might be able to visually just be able to see that and make the relevant changes. Now, the next map that I'm going to show you is a network map, and this network map is built based on link information that we parse from devices. So when we see two devices which we can see are interconnected based on various different bits of information, but we know that, say, two Cisco devices you've got on your network have got a connection between the two, and it will also draw those connections out for you. Now, unfortunately, because I've not got a large enough lab environment to be able to simulate that, I am just going to fake a link. So it's just a basic entry in essence. And if I just refresh this now, I can go to the map section, and I've now got a network map that's appeared. Okay, this is going to load up. So again, based on Viz.js, there's a bunch of stuff you can configure in the background for this, and I'll show you when we get onto the sort of custom maps later on. But this is exactly what you saw a second ago, but this is auto-built based on your network topology. Things like CDP protocols, etc. When that information is sort of passed through via SNMP and we discover that, then we can work out what's connected to what. We build that topology in the database and then just present it here. So usual things, hovering over will give you some graphs as always. You've got your link information here as well, so it's telling you the ports that are connected and which, you know, on each side of this link. And we've got the traffic graphs that have been brought back in there as well. Usual things where you can highlight a node, so we haven't got a huge amount connected in here, but again, you can kind of highlight things as it gets busy. I've seen some like crazy graphs or maps that people are running in their environments just due to the sheer size. So it can be quite difficult to see what's going on at some stages. So the highlight node is quite helpful to be able to just pinpoint individual devices that you're looking for, trying to sort of see. That's it on that one as well. So like I said, I'm kind of flying through some of these other maps. I'm not sure how commonly they are used for people. You know, if there's anything you want me to sort of talk about here, then just feel free to ask a question. I'll come back to it. But just moving on to one of the other maps we've got, which is the geographical map. So this is where you actually do see sort of visual representation across the world. There's a bunch of configuration options you can set here to make it so that the map is zoomed in specific areas, focused on particular regions, etc. But just as it comes out of the box, this is what you would see when you go to the geographical map itself. And what it does is it can only do this based on lat-long or actual proper address values within your syslocation fields or what you may have configured. It will sort of auto-populate where those devices are in the world. So I can see at the minute that we've still got these three devices. I've moved, obviously, two of them based on the locations on the map, and we've got one that's still probably Buckingham Palace down here at the bottom. Clicking on them obviously splits them out. They're clustered at the time, so you can see that this had two devices in there. I've clicked onto each individual one, and that's showing me the relevant device within that particular area of the world. Again, usual things. Clicking on this will take you to the device in your device list. But what you might want to do, obviously, it's not that helpful if most of your devices are populated like you see in this demo here in the UK. So what you can do is sort of change some of that the fields that you see. which are, we've got a configuration option here for, say, the default zoom. So this is how much we're going to zoom into the map itself when we first load it. So I'm just going to change that to 8. I think the default may be 2 out of the box. I refresh now. You can auto zoom in to a better level, so you can change that from 2 to I'm not sure what the maximum number is, but obviously you'll get to a point where you can't go any further. So we're auto zooming in here based on devices we've got in the map. Now you might have multiple locations around the world, so it's very difficult for it to zoom in at a certain level at that particular point. Say you've got some stuff in the US, some stuff in the UK. How do you tell it to only zoom in on one particular part of the world? Well, you've got a couple of options here. I'll show you this in the shell in a second. And this is where we can just set the default lat long value. So I'm just copying and pasting both of these in at the moment, based on the previous lat long fields values that we've been using beforehand, but we've now set those individually. I refresh this page, I can't remember whether this is in the world. There you go. So it's moved us over to Europe. Obviously, our device is in UK in this instance, but I've specifically forced it to zoom in on a particular part of Europe. So you can do that yourself if you just want to highlight a particular part of the world, but you've got devices all over the show. This will just target that particular area that you set. It's worth pointing out, by the way, I should have probably done this at the start, but LibreNMS has got some pretty good documentation. It's not always that up to date, and some of the names of these maps I don't think always reflect what the actual link is in the interface itself. But if you come into the setup and then network maps section of the documentation, all of the different types of maps available are listed in here with sort of some configuration options that you sort of can change. So going to the world map here, we can kind of see some of this, which is one I've set here. Default lat long, the default zoom. You've got things like the radius that it goes to show, etc. But there's a lot of options there. You can actually change this as well. So Leaflet's just one of the mapping engines that are used. You can switch across to OpenStreetMap. So again, if you're restricted on proxies or no internet access, then you can host the OpenStreetMap tiles directly yourself. Just make sure you set this up, and it will just pull that information in from whichever URL you specified locally. So yeah, it's always worthwhile going through some of the configuration options in the documentation. Okay, now just going to go on to the network weather map, which is where we, I guess, moving away from. So network weather map has been out for a long time now. I spent a bit of time a while ago removing the cacti support and adding some basic LibreNMS functionality in there. Unfortunately, network weather map is no longer really maintained. So every time there's like new PHP versions that come out, and people have to just sort of provide a bit of support to get that up and running. Still does a great job in what it does, but there is now new functionality in LibreNMS called the custom maps, which we're kind of trying to steer people more towards. There's a lot more flexibility. There are some drawbacks to it, which I'll run through in a short while. But if you want to set this up, then I'm going to run through what the interface looks like. I'm not going to show how to get it all set up, just because it's a bit of a pain going. It's we've had to shoehorn it into LibreNMS. So typical interface that you see for network weather map here, you go off and you just create your configuration, which is basically just a text file that exists on your server. So I've got this one that I've set up previously. Run into this now. And you can do things like obviously drop a map in the background as a background image, so you can place nodes in certain parts of the world, etc. But for the most part, it's just a vanilla network mapping tool rather than a geographical one. So I've dropped a couple of different devices in here, connected them together. It's very simple of how you do that. Just click somewhere here with add node, and we'll get a little bit of extra information that we have to fill in. So you can give it the name here. So we've got labels, so testing, anything icon that it's using, change that there. You can move it around and clone it, etc. But for the most part, I'm just going to keep this fairly basic, so I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on network weather map. So we've got our device in now. If we want to now add a link by clicking add link at the top, we can select localhost. We should get the ability to now to link that across to the testing device that we've just added in. We get this here. Now, clicking on it, you can change a lot of the values. So we've got things like, the width of that link. We're going to change it down to 2. We can pick from LibreNMS based on the devices that we've selected of which port we're going to connect this to. So if I go to localhost, and it's the same link I've already picked previously, but I'm going to pick that as the interface connecting these two together. And then I can save that now. We're starting to build up an actual network map. Now, there's a cron job that runs in the background that builds a PNG file, basically, in a HTML page where you can host it in your NOC to show what goes on with that. I'm just going to jump straight through it. People know. I don't know if that's a new node that I've run recently, but this is what gets produced by the network weather map. And you'll see some similarities now when we start showing you the custom map of what you see there. A lot of it is sort of inspiration taken, I think, from network weather map itself. But we've got the devices available in our estate as it stands. And then we have the link information, which at the moment is showing you the utilization rate on this particular link. So from this DNS server across the local hosts, we're using over 25% of the available interface for traffic at the minute, but going the other way, it's just 3%. You've got the key at the bottom here, which is just showing you based on color what the sort of the rough percentage ranges of utilization on that particular link. Head back to the actual interface, the editor. So you can do things where you're sort of editing the actual map properties, so giving it a different title, etc. This is where you can specify the default link width and bandwidth speeds per port. So change these if we know all of our ports on our network are a gig or 10 gig or 100, whatever it might be. You can just edit these here. You can change the size of them and where it's outputting the information as the cron builds that map up for you. This is where I mentioned you can change the background image, so you can drop your own images in a particular directory within Network Weather Map, and it gets pulled into this interface, and you can select that to be used on the background there. That's what probably on the Network Weather Map. I'm going to show you the custom map, spend a bit more time on custom maps and where things are moving to in LibreNMS. So if I just here. Okay, so under maps now, I've not got any created. I'm going to do this in real time, so I'm hoping everything works. One of the things to just start off with on the custom maps is this image manager. So this is where you can just upload your own images, whether you want to use it as a device icon, a background image, etc. You can just manage all of that from this interface here. I'm not going to select any of those. I'm just going to use what comes out the box with it. But that is where you can go off and make those changes yourself. So we want to start off in custom map editor. This is where we're going to now start creating individual maps. Now, whether that's based on per location or you want to do it across the globe, entirely up to yourselves. However, because it is a JavaScript-based library that we're using to sort of display this information, it can get heavily loaded depending on the size of the estate. So, we've heard people with hundreds of devices saying it's starting to lag out, etc. Obviously, I think over time, performance optimization will continue to happen there and things will get improved. But it's worth keeping that in mind, that if you think you're going to build a geographical map with 1,000 devices on one page, you might start seeing things slow down quite drastically at that point. So it's worthwhile splitting them out. So we're going to start off with the new map. All this testing. You have the ability to group these together. So you've either got existing groups that you can select from. I don't have anything here, but I'm just going to say create a group here now for UK. So I'll put any groups, any maps I create and select the UK group. I'll put them all together just for display purposes more than anything. We can set the width and height of the map. So I'm going to leave it on this default here, but you can change both those aspects, and you can do that at any particular point in time as well. So you don't have to get that right on day one of creating the map. You can change it. Things like node alignment and link separation. So this is a bit of a grid system going on in the background where it'll snap to a grid. And this is basically just how closely it will align nodes when you do that. If you set it down to 0, it's going to disable it. And then incrementally, as you go up through the numbers, it's just going to allow a bigger gap between nodes or snap them to sort of bigger gaps as you increase that value. I'm going to leave it on the 10, just like what comes out the box. Now, you've got a bunch of other information here that you can sort of change. That's the ability to pan and zoom, things like move nodes around, and what's called a physics engine in this. Documented in Viz.js, it can produce some comical results. So I'm not going to turn on things like the physics engine as part of this, because what you'll see is devices and nodes will start moving around and float around on the screen. So when you want to put this on your NOC, or you just want to get to looking at what's going on in your network, it's not really that particularly helpful, but you can tune those values and tweak them as part of the configuration. But I am going to allow panning and zooming and to move nodes. I don't need to reverse any of these arrows. The arrows are for the bandwidth direction links. You can do that on a per link basis anyway. I'm going to leave it standard, which is off. And then we're just going to create this map now. So once you get in here, you've got the ability to set various different default options within the map. You will also have a ability to save this once we start making changes. It's just worth noting that as you drop nodes in and create edges and links, etc., within this, it doesn't automatically save. So you do have to be mindful that you need to go back to the button or that'll appear on the top right and save your map either every so often or just when you finish configuring everything. You'll also notice as well, now we get to hover over the top here, we've now got a new section here under maps, which is our group that we created. And then from the group, we have the individual map that we're currently configuring at the moment. So obviously this gets bigger as you add more maps in there. So let's start off and take a look at some of the map settings. This is what you've already configured beforehand. So if there's any changes you want to make to this, you can go back and do it. So if you need to change the size because it's not quite tall enough, then we can come back in and save that. And that will adapt the map based on those changes that you've done. So if you've turned something on you didn't mean to, you can turn it off. Or if you've set the incorrect information or given it the wrong name, you can adjust all of that information. Now, background, as I mentioned, you can do your own images. So we can upload here and it'll go into the image manager at a later stage. I'm not going to do that. But you can also do the map. So as I showed you previously about sort of zooming in and customizing exactly where the map appears, you can do the same thing here. So if I just save this now, you should get a map of the world. But if I go back here and say, right, okay, well, actually, I just want to zoom in on that general location. I'm not sure where this is going to place it, but we can now zoom in. Okay, there you go. So over the sea somewhere, not very helpful. But you can choose, customize that where you want it, how you want that to display. This is a manual setting, so I've just done adjust map, so I can go here and say, okay, actually, we're going to zoom in on, in fact, let's go to the US for this one. We're going to go over to the US, set that view so we can see across east to west. Once I save that, you can see here now it's updating the latitude, longitude, and the zoom level just interactively rather than me manually set everything out. So I'm going to leave that here now, even though we've got no devices in this location. Obviously, this is us manually placing these devices, so it doesn't actually matter what the syslocation fields have in here. We're building this up ourselves, just like we did with Network Weathermap. Have a quick check for any questions popping up. Okay. We've got these node and edge defaults. So like you saw in Network Weathermap before, you can customize or set the specific fields that you want, how you want them to be. So when you go to add a node or an edge in, they will always default to those. So if you, again, things like your bandwidth port, your port settings that you want on across your devices, you can customize those globally rather than doing it on a per edge basis. So here, this is for the nodes. So again, you've got different options around what that looks like when you drop a node in. I'm a fan of things like the circular device image, which is basically going to take the logo we've got within LibreNMS and do it as a bit of a circle. It's quite nice. You can choose the size, change the fonts, and the colors that they all appear as. But the only one I'm going to change there is the image that we're using by default. And if we go to edit edge defaults here, we've got things like, so this shows the percentage usage. So like we saw in Network Weathermap, if we're using 50% of the bandwidth, that's going to be shown on the actual map itself, but you can also indicate that you want to see the BPS. So I think that will change based on megabits per second, gigabits per second, etc. But if you want to see the actual values that are appearing there, you can do that. This is the ability to sort of change. Well, I'll come back to that actually when I create an edge, because you get some extra options there about what that link looks like, especially when you start configuring multiple links between different nodes. To stop them overlapping, you have different properties that you can configure. So I'll come back to that one when we actually create an edge. You can play around with that at a later stage. But we've got the font, the size, the color, all of those you can customize. And like I said, this is just the defaults for when we create an edge in a short while. So we've got our basics ready to go. Unlike Network Weathermap, we don't need to run any cron jobs to build these maps up. This is pure and simply just going to be available. So if as I mentioned here, we've got the save map now because I've started to make changes to it. That appears. So I'm going to save that. And what I'll do is now I'll come over here, go to the UK group and then the testing. And I'm just going to jump on and show you this is what it looks like. So it's pretty much the same view of the world as you had when you were editing the device, but without a lot of the configuration options available. Now we've not done anything else, got no nodes, got no edges in at the minute. We're gonna add those in shortly. But that's what you would see, and you can push that out to your knock screens, etc. If I go back to here, we've got a quick link here to just edit the current map, or you just go back to custom map editor and then edit the particular map that you want to change. But we've only got one built. We're going to edit this one now. So LibreNMS talks about devices everywhere, but in this area, I think we've just defaulted to what Viz.js is typically calling them, which is nodes and edges. So node is a device, edge is a link between those devices or nodes. You literally just click on add node. Now you select now where you want that to be. So obviously you can drop it in a particular state. We pick which device it is. So it just builds up from the list that we have here. I'm going to do localhost. I'll come back to this one. You've got the ability here to link to other maps rather than an actual device, which can be quite helpful if you kind of sort of build out a particular site where you've got all your devices in, but you've got 3 other sites that are interlinked. You can have it so that you can click between those maps from one map, which is quite helpful. The style, let's pick this out from what I've selected as the default previously, which is this circular device image, because I quite like it. We're going to keep the node size at that particular size. You can reduce that down or make it even bigger. And we're going to leave the rest of the defaults here as well. So we can now see we've got a single device, a single node that's been set up. Obviously, that's useless on its own. So we're going to add a second one in. I'm going to run through all these options again, but I'm going to select a different one. We're going to just drop this one in now. So we've got 2 servers here, 2 different states in the US. We now need to connect them together. We've got some dark fiber running across. We're connecting them up. So you do add edge. You select add edge, and then you literally from one device to another, just holding your mouse down, just drag from the first device to the second device. And now you get the ability to add some information around what that connection looks like. So we've got the direction that we think this interface is pointing in, basically. We can switch those around, but we want to pick a port. So here now we've got just the ports available for those 2 devices we're referring to. And we're going to say it's the local hosts interface that we care about in this particular point. If you want to reverse that, you can just turn this option on, and that is literally saying rather than going from localhost to DNS server, it's going from DNS server to localhost, and that's the direction that we want it to see in. So line style, this is what I mentioned before, lots of options to play with in this. I'm going to leave it on dynamic because I'm not adding multiple links in here. But if you did, you had, say, a lag and you want to connect 2 interfaces together between 2 devices, then you might need to start changing some of the fields here to make sure that the links don't overlap or the text information doesn't overlap, etc. It's worth having a play around, but I actually do find dynamic is pretty good and usually gets things right. But if not, you can come back here and kind of change how these look. So if you've got things like diagonal cross, you want it to look like it's transferring from one different port to another, you can come in and select those, but for the most part, dynamic's always going to work for you. We set these as defaults, but we want to see the percentage and the bits per second or converted value when we see that. You can give it a different label, otherwise it just uses the interface names that we've seen before. I'm going to leave that as well. And then we've got this fixed width, so just I think this is the option that I saw earlier. This is just the ability to actually configure things to have the different thickness of the lines in essence that we've seen in the network weather map. We're going to leave that as it is. Okay, and we can obviously change where you want the text to be. So I'm going to put it on top of this particular line. And if we save that now, so we can see the text appears at the top. We've got percentage at the minute. I think if we save this, and hopefully it's not going to show me up and show that it doesn't work, but there we go. So we've now got the percentage and the bits per second. So if I now just go back to this map, hopefully these values all update at that particular point, and we get the real life usage. So minus 1%, so I think it's a gig link this, so it's using very minimal, so the calculation's not obviously been as good as it could be there. Starting to see a little bit more traffic this way, but you get the idea. I think that does work in practice for the most part. Head back over to edit this map. Okay, I mentioned before that we can, we've got things like this, by the way, toggle legend. So just as you saw in network weather map, different colors based on the links and how heavily used they are. So you'll see, not actually sure why we get over 100% on a link. I think it may be because you can override things like the port speed values, whereas obviously the port speed on the physical device may actually be a different value. So I think that's kind of indicating what that could be there. But you see this green to red, just showing you at a glance visually what the link utilization rate looks like on a link. But yeah, you can link between maps as well. So if I now just go through and let me create a new map as a quick test. So I'm going to keep this in the UK group, them all together. Standard settings there before. We're going to do pan and zoom and move nodes, and that's all set up. Okay, I'll drop one quick device in this one just to show you, but what we're more interested in is linking it back to the other map. So if I had a new node in, I'm going to pick one that is down at the minute, so this one, that's an actual device, so we've got that one in there at the moment. If I now go and add a second node into this one, what we actually want to do is link it to a map. So we're going to do this here. So map, same setup here where you can do different aspects to how this is visually shown on here. I haven't configured the defaults, that's why it's not going to device image circular, but you can change this to however you want. So I'm going to change this to an icon, and we're going to turn around and say it's Wi-Fi. Okay, so if I save that now, head out to the this new linked map to see it live. And this second node that I've now dropped in, so whilst the first one's going to take me to this server that I've created as just a ping only, as another test, I've got this one which is going to take me to the other map. So in theory, if I double click that should now take us to the other map we've got set up. So you can do that to reference back to various different locations that you've got. So you're building smaller network weather maps out rather than one grand one with multiple, hundreds of devices in one, which is, like I said, is going to start lagging things down. Okay, let's head back to the editor. Okay, you have got the ability to move these around. So whilst we can sort of make the changes on the fly, you can literally move these links any way you want, which may or may not be helpful, but you can change the the style of those links, and it will do different things. But when we go back to the map, I'm not saving this particular one, but that would reflect on this map. However, because we've set the ability to sort of pan around, etc., and move nodes, you can actually do that in real time here. So if you wanted to take a quick screenshot of going, I'm going to move this device to this location, it's not saving it, but you can move that about, and we can sort of zoom in and out of what we see here as well. Not very helpful on a geographical map, but if you wanted to sort of zoom in on a particular part of your network, then that's how you're able to do that here. Just head back to edit this one. So the custom maps have the ability to kind of, as you drop a bunch of nodes in, to re-render that map. I think you should tidy things up a little bit. Let's see if I can get that button to appear. These are there we go. So we can now re-render that map, and it's obviously fixing the links. So as I move these around, just changes and fixes any issues that you have created by manually moving things. So I don't know how good it is at, there you go, being able to detect things like crossovers, but you can just drag things around, click re-render at the end of it, and it will update everything that's been configured and try and show it you in the best possible way. Okay, that's probably about it on the map side of things now. So yeah, no saved changes. What I'm going to just quickly show you, so I've configured this in the test environment, but we've obviously got the dashboards, which have got a bunch of widgets in there that you can use. I've configured a few of these maps right now. We've got this custom map one here, which is broken because it's a map I've deleted, but I can edit that. These all have their own configuration options as well. So we can kind of see this globe one, which has got this cluster of devices in London. We've got the world map one. We go in and edit these. So again, we can change the individual, for this particular widget, the individual lat long values of where we start off and the zoom level. So that can be done on a per widget basis. But the custom maps as well. So I'm going to just edit this one because it's a map that I've previously created and then deleted. Go in here now and just select the test one that we've set up, and straight away we get into the view that we've previously configured. Now you'll have noticed we've got things like the ability to do screenshot mode. So that's not creating sort of an exported PNG file, which would be good from a performance perspective. This is more just so you can pass a parameter onto the URL. If you wanted to see the full map or in the widget, it does it automatically, but it just removes labels, kind of tidies things up a little bit. So if I save this now, you're not really going to visually see much with this just because of the size of it. But it should, when it re-renders properly, and assume everything works, stops any of these labels appearing. Just refresh the page because that might just be an issue with my test environment. Go. Left the box. This, I think this might just be a bit of a hang up because we're using the map in the background, and all it does is it sort of blanks it over. It removes the text labels, but obviously the actual boxes are still there. So things like that need probably tidying up themselves. But that's it. Yeah. So these are the sort of widgets you can set up. We've got the availability map. That's the first one I showed you. Obviously, rather than the logos and images, it's a bit more of a condensed box here. We show you what's up and what's down at the moment, just to visually get a view of what's happening with your environment. Okay, I mean, from a mapping perspective and locations, I think I've showed you everything, just a sort of overview of how it all fits together. Documentation's key. You know, some of it does need improving, but please do have a read through the documentation because it is explained quite well in a lot of areas, especially the custom map, because it's all quite new to LibreNMS. That has a lot of information in there at the moment, and just needs to get expanded out a bit more for some of the newer functionality. It is actively being maintained as well. So unlike Network Weathermap, which is in essence just being fixed anytime there's breaking changes when new PHP versions come out or the LibreNMS code base impacts it, those things usually get picked up, not particularly quickly, but they do get fixed at some stage. Whereas the custom map is actively maintained. If there's bugs and issues that people come across or new features, they get developed fairly quickly. So it's worthwhile considering switching over to that if you're a network Weathermap user. Just consider the number of devices that you might build out onto an actual map, because the bigger it is, the more laggy it gets, and you might come across challenges with that. But again, efficiencies sort of get introduced over time anyway, and things will get better and better as more people feed back to the developer on that one. That's it from my side. This should have been recorded, so I'll share the video YouTube link when I get access to it. Hopefully I don't get done over like I did last time, where Zoho managed to corrupt the webinar and had to re-record the whole thing. Hopefully that becomes available. But yeah, just to kind of touch base on what we've gone through. So we've covered off the locations and managing and configuring those. So that's the ability to edit things in the interface itself, how that information comes through from a device, how you can remap those if you need to make changes en masse by sort of setting some configuration options within LibreNMS, or just manually setting coordinates in the interface, which is quite helpful just to sort of keep things consistent and tidy. We ran through just a whistle-stop tour of the maps that exist in LibreNMS, whether it's a geographical one or not. A lot of those, probably don't get too much actively developed anymore, but they're there and available for people to use. But the one we are pushing people more and more towards now is the custom maps. It is really good. I think it really does pick up where Weathermap left off, and I think it's pretty much a drop-in replacement. You do have to rebuild the maps from scratch, unfortunately. There's no auto conversion tool between the two systems, but obviously it's usually a good time to tidy things up when you're forced to do things from scratch again anyway. If you've got any questions after this, feel free to reach out to me on Discord or LinkedIn. Happy to help people out where I can do. I'm going to put a poll up on LinkedIn as well about what future sessions you might want me to cover on this. Happy to give up my time just to run through things. I try and do it to a decent enough level that is helpful without it being too generalized. But yeah, any future ideas, please do let me know. You'll also get a link just with feedback off the back of this as well. I'm sometimes not the best at presenting. If I've been too quick, not covered the right information, then do feedback on that, and I'll do my best to sort of improve next time. But also, if there's anything that gets called out, I can always just re-record parts of the video or something a bit more specific. And I do maintain a YouTube channel for sort of, especially the LibreNMS side of things, but also some of the other services that I provide. And if you need any help with LibreNMS, then yeah, get in touch. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.